Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today from wherever you are for our December virtual info session where we're going to be talking about graduate school during a pandemic. What a year it's been, everyone. And we're almost to the end of it. Although I know that doesn't really mean much in terms of the pandemic, but there is something about the end of a year coming close to maybe you're wrapping up your final projects if you're in school, you're getting ready for the holidays, or just so ready to say that 2020 is over, which is where I certainly am. I think we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief that there is something new to look forward to, which is a new year. But hang in there, everyone. We're going to get there together. My name is Sarah Birch. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment for the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. And today I am joined by a fantastic panel of folks who I get to call colleagues and friends who are going to talk to you a little bit about what it's been like at the Brown School this year with all of the changes that we've had to see. I'm going to start off with just a couple, housekeeping. So we are recording this session for folks who are here live, and then hopefully this will be available for anyone who isn't watching with us live. You can watch later on as well. If you have questions at all, we would prefer that you use the Q&A function as opposed to the chat function. That just helps us to filter in those questions as they come through. So go ahead and do a little practice run with that Q&A function and submit a test question. You can say your name there again as well, just so that we see that everyone's using that properly. And we'll be very open to answering as many questions as we can get to throughout the session. Now I want to go ahead and turn it over to my panelists and allow them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with my three Brown School leaders from the leadership team, and we'll go in this order. We'll go Lorian, Jenny, and Jackie. If you three can introduce yourselves.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. Hello, everybody. My name is Lorian Carter. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an associate professor of practice at the Brown School. I also wear a couple other hats. Administratively, I am the chairperson for the MSW Foundation year, which is your first year in our program, which means I support all of the lead instructors for all of the courses that our full MSW students take, not the advanced standing BSW grads, but anybody who comes in without an undergraduate in social work. So I support that whole first year. And I also am the interim concentration chair for children, youth, and families concentration. And I also wear a hat as a faculty instructional coach. So I support teaching excellence for all of our faculty, from adjuncts to doctoral students to junior faculty to fully tenured folks. So I have a lot of different hats that I wear and a lot of different ways that I'll get to share some information with you today. It's good to be with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny Harpering. I'm a teaching professor at the Brown School, and I'm also the assistant dean for field education. So I oversee, with a great team of people, all things practicum and internship, and that includes working with the organizations in the field to recruit practicum sites, and then working with students in your journey to choose your own practicum.
Hi, my name is Jacky MartinezPullin, and I am the Chief of Staff for Dean McKay. I'm also an Assistant Dean for Strategic Initiatives, and I'm also an academic advisor like the other two of my colleagues. We have many different hats and roles that we play here at the Brown School.
Thank you, Lorian, Jenny, and Jackie. And now I'll have my panel of current students introduce themselves. If you can share your name, pronouns, the program and year that you're in, and also share whether you chose to do the fully online track or the hybrid track this semester for coursework. And for order, we will go Emily, Danny, and then Sean.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a first year MSW student, and I am doing the fully remote track this semester. So I'm living in Baltimore, but doing all of my classes virtually.
Hi everyone, my name is Danny Lee. I'm actually second year Master of Social Policy and Public Health program student. For this semester, I'm doing the hibernate model. I'm taking 2 of the courses in person and others online.
Hi all, my name is Sean Sudacum. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a first year MSW student. I'm completely remote right now. I live in Jackson, Wyoming. So like Emily, I'm doing all of my classes online. And I love bagels. I didn't answer that question in the chat.
Yeah, we should have all of our panelists also say what they enjoy most over in the chat. Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. So as we are all fully aware, we have been faced with a very unprecedented moment in our history this year. And like so many organizations across the globe, the Brown School had to make some major pivots in response to the transitioning our operations for the pandemic. We transitioned to being nearly 100% remote in the spring semester, which was completely new for our school because we've always been an in-person community. We really value that as part of the pedagogical approach to how we teach and learn and be in community with one another. And so it was a huge change for all of us. But through all those changes, you know, that we needed to make, we knew we wanted to maintain our core values. And so in mid-March, Dean McKay, with the rest of the leadership at the Brown School, really helped to define how our school would operate during this time through these values that we established. And every decision that has been made since then has been really grounded in these 6 value areas. We're going to link to a place on our website where you can read a little bit more about these 6 areas, but I'd love if Jackie, since you are a member of the Dean's team, if you can talk a little bit about how the Dean's office partnered with leadership across the school and really across the university to kind of establish these values and then prepare our community for the major pivots that we had to make this year.
Thank you, Sarah. March seems so far away. It seems like we've come a long ways in the last 8 months. But yeah, in some ways it seems like it was just yesterday. I remember in late February, we were starting to get the idea that we needed to begin planning. And so we did. As soon as we thought that we're going to have to go online, we began meeting as a group. We created an emergency preparedness team that encompassed our academic leaders and our administrative leaders, and we pulled everybody together. We had meetings once a week, if not twice a week. We gave updates, we got input. We tried to figure out very quickly how we could move forward with our mission and then again, leading with our values. So the slide that Sarah has up, the service and competence, responsibility and compassion, and you can read the rest of them. These were all things that helped guide us in how we moved forward. And I remember specifically conversations with Jenny about how are we going to move field education forward? How are we going to ensure that students were able to graduate with the number of field hours that they needed? And so we were very concerned about making sure that we had this responsibility to our students to move them forward and to continue educating them. We also had a responsibility to our faculty to support them. And I remember conversations with Lorian about how can we do this? What do we need to do to support our faculty to move them online? Some of them were comfortable right away, some of them were not. And so how do we as staff, faculty, work together to make sure that we continue to deliver on educational excellence to our students? And again, when we think about our connection to the community, we want to make sure that we're upholding, this dedication and this idea of equity, and making sure that we're serving the areas, particularly vulnerable areas that have really been vulnerable to COVID. How do we continue to do that? Through our research, through our field ed. And so those are all areas that we looked at and we really thought through. In the summer, about in May, I guess, we started a task force that really tried to prepare us for this last fall year. And we really worked on what are the public health protocols that we need to have in place to make it a safe community. And so we worked on that all summer, again, leading with our values. And then even this fall, as we've had to make adjustments and respond to questions from students, staff, and faculty, how we've been able to do that and really keep any kind of threat to our Brown School community very, very low. And so we've continued to do this. And now we just started another task force to look at our spring semester and how we continue our public health protocols and continue to deliver the best high quality education that we can in this time during a pandemic.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, this is difficult and ongoing work for sure. I was actually listening to, I don't know if anyone here, probably because we have some social work folks, are fans of Brene Brown, but I was listening to her podcast this morning and she talked about this idea of FFTs, and I'll bleep out myself, but it's first times, and we're in a first time for the entire globe, which is a pandemic. It's the first time in our lifetimes that we've ever had to deal with something so monumentally challenging to all the ways that we do everything, and it's continuing to be so. And so I think that all the things that Jackie kind of mentioned too, especially for the Brown School, because we are so grounded in this work of ensuring that the communities we serve are being protected, and that doesn't just include our own Brown School community, but that includes the St. Louis region, that includes the nation at large, and then for many of our students and scholars, that means international communities as well. And so the work that we've been doing has really trickled out to all of these kind of areas of impact that the Brown School has always been a part of. So when it comes to actually attending the Brown School, during a pandemic, it looks a little different, as we all can imagine and now know after having experienced this for the last 8 months. And the first area of operations that had to shift was our curriculum, or one of the first. Until this year, the Brown School only offered in-person instruction for our graduate programs in social work, public health, and social policy. And so making the shift to remote and hybrid learning was a major lift. So I'm going to turn it to Lorian to kind of discuss what those changes to curriculum looked like and the work that went into making all of those things happen.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it was a lift for sure. I'm echoing a little bit. Do you hear an echo? It's okay for you? Okay. It was a lift for sure for us to shift. In the spring semester, we called it emergency remote teaching because we really were just trying to save our semester and allow students to get the last half of the semester in a way that was as close to normal as we could promise in the midst of a pandemic. But as Jackie mentioned, we then spent the summer really figuring out what does this need to look like into the next academic year. And one of the things that we did was ask students what their preferences were and took those into account along with the public health protocols and along with faculty preference and comfort and ability to actually be in person if necessary. And what we heard from the majority of our incoming students as well as our returning students was they came to the Brown School for that in-person experience, and the majority of them wanted to have that as an option. So with the enrollment tracks, it was the first time we'd offered enrollment tracks. 70% of students are in a hybrid track, and only 30% are taking their courses fully remote or online. And hybrid means a couple things. So hybrid means that as a track, some of your courses are online as well as some of them are in person, but the in-person courses looked different this year as well. We weren't standing up 3-credit courses that met once a week for 3 hours in person. As a result of the public health protocols that the university and the Brown School adopted, it meant that everyone it was universal masking, physical distancing of 6 or more feet, and those those two things meant that our classrooms looked really different. And so the in-person classes also included a lot of asynchronous content, so that students were only coming in person for the elements, the applied practice elements, the parts of the class that could not be well conveyed or actually give students the opportunity, the fullest, most broad opportunity to do the in-person elements. That's what we use the in-person class time for. So that was a lot of the work that went into kind of thinking about what would these enrollment tracks look like. And then obviously making sure that we were offering all of our required, at least foundation courses, had both an online as well as an in-person option across the multiple sections. So it means that in the spring, we will have the opportunity to see how the courses that we thought needed to be offered only in person will actually function online, because some of our first year students who will be fully online again in the spring. So this did not happen without a lot of faculty preparation. And so we did a lot of training with faculty. We started with making sure that they were very familiar with Canvas, which is the learning management system that we use at the Brown School. Prior to the pandemic, some of our faculty had never even opened their Canvas site. Some students were really unfamiliar with how to navigate Canvas, because they hadn't been sort of socialized to that across some of their courses. So the first thing we did was make sure that our faculty were able to fully use the robust features of Canvas, because Canvas can do a lot of things. And so we taught our faculty and got them enrolled in a short course on Canvas about actually using the Canvas learning management system. And then we also, Dean McKay required all faculty to complete a short course, a self-paced course called Foundations of Digital Pedagogy. And this was true whether faculty were teaching a fully remote course or an in-person course, because at any point throughout last semester or this coming semester, if the public health guidelines state that we need to move to fully remote, we wanted to make sure that all of our faculty were prepared. So that Foundations of Digital Pedagogy class really supported all of our faculty to really understand how to convey, and not only convey material, but create engagement and community and connection, because those are the things that that we think that can happen much more easily in person. We don't want to lose that in our online environment. Also, many of our faculty took advantage of a 2-week, really intensive course design institute, where they took at least one of their courses and completely revamped it for an online or hybrid model. So that was a pretty extensive training that about 25% of our faculty participated in over the summer. We also trained all of our faculty in some high-tech ed tech tools. So how to use, in addition to Canvas, things like there's a fun resource called Padlet, which sort of functions like sticky notes on a whiteboard in a classroom. There's a feature called Perusal, which is a collaborative annotation tool where students can mark up a document together in person or online. So we gave our faculty access to some sort of the bells and the whistles above and beyond what Canvas can do, so that they really could create engaging opportunities for students. We trained faculty in IT for the classrooms that had an opportunity for what we call high flex, which is it was implemented in person and concurrently online. I want to be really clear, that is not the norm. We will not be promising students that they can have access to a high flex course. We have a few faculty who are well prepared to do that with their content and their own expertise. It's a really resource heavy kind of structure because it requires that there's at least one additional person in the classroom who's managing all of the cameras, the zoom, the tilt, the pan, the microphones for students to be able to hear each other when they're online as well as in the classroom. But for those, there were a few courses that wanted to try it, so they got IT training. And then for every faculty member who was teaching in person, they also got a tailored training in terms of the in-person protocols and the things that we were adjusting in order to meet those public health protocols. So again, a lot of faculty prep that started in the summer and has continued throughout this academic year. I send bi-weekly teaching tips to all of our faculty that really help them kind of think about what they can be doing in the moment and not waiting to see at the end of the semester, what do we want to revamp entirely for the coming semester. We do a lot of seeking student feedback, and our students are really good at giving us feedback whether we've sought it or not. So we have a variety of mechanisms for that. This semester we did, for all of our students who were in person, we did a week 4 check-in to find out how the public health protocols were working for them. Did they feel like they were getting what they expected from the in-person experience? Did they ever see anyone not masked or not at 6 feet distance? And so we checked in early in the semester, and then we use mid-semester and final course evaluations really intentionally. We always have. Those evaluations are used to support faculty making adaptations and adjustments to their course or their teaching style. But since the pandemic last spring, we've added questions to the mid-semester and final semester evaluations, specifically about the impact of the pandemic, and getting feedback really formally in that through that mechanism. And then we have a couple other mechanisms. So our student coordinating council has done things like a student survey where they've sought student information and input, as well as they hold open office hours where they're asking students to share what's happening in the Brown School community, and they feed that information back to our administrative leadership teams. And then we've had multiple town halls. I jokingly say we've had more student town halls since the pandemic than in all the years that I've been a faculty member, and I've been on faculty since 2007. And we've had more town halls since last March, where we're actively providing information to students, seeking their feedback, giving them real-time responses to what's happening with them. And I anticipate that those will continue throughout the spring semester and beyond. That's where I'm going to pause.
Great, thank you, Lorian. Yeah, it's so much. Just hearing you talk through all of those things, my goodness. And and to Jackie's point earlier too, March seems like it was so long ago, and yet we're still making so many of these changes. So I have a couple questions. 2 of them actually came from a couple of our attendees. And the first, and you kind of alluded to this, Lorian, in saying that this isn't the norm for us. But the question is, will an all online track be available post-COVID?
I anticipate that it will not, but everything is sort of up in the air, right? Partly because we have had a really long history of in-person, kind of that's where the learning happens in our classrooms, because we don't see this as just passive transmission of knowledge, but really engaging students in applied practice. And there are ways to simulate that online, but it's always, it's a close approximation, which is different from what we really think is a really high quality experience in person. And then I would also say, in addition to that, the students want to be in person with us, right? When we surveyed our incoming students from over the summer to ask kind of what they wanted, all of them said, if we can, we want to be in person. Like that, not all, but the vast majority of folks were looking at the Brown School, accepted the Brown School because they wanted that in-person environment. There are some really, really strong online MSW programs across the country that they've sort of doubled down on that, right? Like they've put a lot of resources and, and attention into not being a bricks and mortar institution. And the Brown School has not wanted to follow suit with that pre-pandemic. So I think it might be a discussion that we will have as faculty post-pandemic, but I think what you're going to see is a return to in-person And we will be taking more advantage of these ed tech tools. There are some things that I implemented this semester. I taught 3 courses. 1 was fully online, 2 had a hybrid in-person component. I added some new things that in all 3 of those classes that I loved and that I think supported students' learning. And so I don't ever want to get rid of those, right? Like I actually like them watching some lectures in advance of class and doing what we call a pre-flexion question. That sort of prepared them for what they were going to do when they came in person for their applied practice element that week. And the applied practice elements were much, much stronger than in previous semesters where students didn't do a pre-flexion question. So there are things like that that I think you will see some adaptation and some adjustment for all of our faculty as we found a thing or two that we really like that we had never used in the past that we think we will keep post-pandemic. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Lorian. And Jackie, I don't know, I saw you had yourself unmuted. If you wanted to add something, please do.
I'm just going to add very quickly because I know we have a lot of the presentation still left to give. One of my roles as the Assistant Dean for Strategic Initiatives has been to lead our strategic planning process for the next 10 years. And it has come up to us about how can we be more accessible and adaptable in the coming 10 years. One of the things we are looking at is, could we in the future, again, this won't be for next year or the next 3 years, but in the next 5 to 10 years, could we have some online programming or part-time programming? And those are all things we're thinking about and realizing. I think we are looking at all of our things again because of the pandemic, and that is something that we're hearing from students that, we do have. I think there's 2 students on this panel who are doing full-time online. They're remote, they're in different places in the parts of the US. And so I think that those are things we're looking at for the future, but we definitely aren't going to rule anything out at this point.
Thanks, Jackie. And I would love to hear too, from Emily and Sean, if you can talk a little bit about what the experience has been like for you doing it fully remote. And then of course I want to hear from Danny too about your experience in person. We'll start with Emily and Sean if you want to share a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, so when I was applying to grad schools pre-COVID, the online experience is definitely not something I was expecting. But I have to say I've been like really pleasantly surprised, and I've really enjoyed my online classes, even though I thought like it would have some barriers to like the educational experience I was expecting. I've found that I think my professors have really taken to the online format and made it really flexible and engaging in a way that's been really impressive. Like, I find that it's not just kind of like sitting on Zoom and listening. There's a lot of like changes and engagement. So like one professor does like a weekly debate between 2 students where they present 2 different sides of a policy, and then also has like aspects of lecture and discussion. Some professors will have students like facilitate a different discussion topic every week so that everyone kind of stays engaged. And I also have found that they've been really intentional about building community online. So some professors will offer like a session at the beginning of class for students to just check in with each other in breakout rooms, kind of similar to how you would chat at the beginning of an in-person class, which I found really nice. And have just made themselves really available by email and after class and with office hours to have one-on-one sessions with students, so that we're kind of still getting that sense of personal relationships and community that you would get more easily in an in-person setting. So I've had a pretty positive experience overall.
Yeah, I would definitely echo Emily's sentiment and take it even a step further and get a little candid and say, a big choice for me in going back to grad school in the first place was feeling like I wanted to shift my career towards really, interpersonal work. Like I love school. I wanted a really, robust in-person experience because I want a career that hopefully is very in person as I'm pursuing my LCSW. And I was pretty salty when I learned that I would probably be online for my first semester and did not have high hopes for it. And was mainly worried about this kind of like networking aspect of grad school, you know, like really wanting to connect with professors and feel like they were accessible to me. And I thought that wouldn't happen. And I've had amazing relationships with my professors. Like Emily and I were in this really awesome, like our social justice human diversity class. I've had just some like really like interesting, inflammatory, like heart-wrenching discussions with people that I really didn't think that I would get from an online experience. And I feel like my expectations were definitely exceeded. I do feel like, you know, discussions are really lively. Teachers have been so accommodating. I mean, probably more accommodating than any professors I've had like in undergrad. You know, there's like a COVID policy for every class where professors are like, we trust that you're here because you want to be here. So if things come up, like just communicate with us. I've been really pleasantly surprised. And while I really hope that I am back on campus for my concentration year, I've really, really enjoyed school thus far. So that's my take on it.
So maybe I can share more about my experience taking in-person classes. I just didn't realize that the Brown School community can be so resilient. The overall feeling of the in-person classes is, I feel very safe. The school is offering for all the graduate students and both the undergraduate students for the free COVID test screen. And also we took online classes on campus regarding every detailed aspects of the in-person class, what will the in-person class would be like, and all the protocols. And also we have the self-screen reporting every day. And when I took one of my in-person classes, there were about 10 students in the classroom, and we were the classroom were arranged following the social distancing protocol, and everyone is wearing a mask. I just feel very safe, and I really like the in-person connections during this pandemic, since everyone is staying at home for so long. And as an international student, sometimes I will feel isolated. So the in-person classes really improved my feelings and my life during this pandemic. Yes.
I wanted to add one more quick point. So I actually didn't know how much training faculty had done until Lorian brought it up. And I would say that even though professors have been incredibly like, just, I didn't know that they had done all that, and it's very impressive that they have. You know, a big choice in coming to the Brown School is just the Brown School community, and you don't really lose any of that expertise in this online setting, because there really is no other institution like quite like the Brown School. Some of that is the faculty and academics that it attracts. Some of it is the city of St. Louis, and what an interesting case study it is for people who care about public health and equity and social welfare. But I just wanted to add that as well. Like sometimes it just feels like you're not even in Zoom really, which sounds a little like contrived to say, but it's true.
I love that. Thanks, John. And thank you, Danny and Emily, for sharing your perspectives as well. I know I see lots of questions trickling into the Q&A piece, and I certainly want to try to get to as many of those as possible. One question that I did see come in was about internships and practicum, and that is a perfect segue to the next thing we are going to talk about, which is the changes to field education that had to happen this year. It's central to the curriculum of all three of our programs, and so we really had to make a huge lift there with shifting we have over, what is it now, Jenny? You could probably speak to this, but I know over 400, maybe over 500 partner sites at this point. Had to make a lot of, collaborative changes with them. And so I am gonna shift to Jenny now to kind of talk through what that's looked like from a field education point of view.
Yeah, so you all can imagine my entire job is placing students in community. And last March, we had a shelter in place order in St. Louis that really forced us to think through what it means to educate people in community when people aren't able to move freely through the community. And we put a lot of thinking around that. We have a collaborative in St. Louis of field directors from several of the schools in the area. And so we were able to think with them on the social work side, really think about the implications for public health and for social policy as well. And one of the questions that we kept asking was, what does it mean to be training to be a social worker, a public health practitioner, or a social policy practitioner, where you might be an essential worker in a pandemic? Like you might be, as a social worker, a public health practitioner, a social policy practitioner, on the front lines. And so what does it mean to be educating people for careers where they may be frontline essential workers while protecting our students from this communicable disease and protecting our community from students? Students can be vectors too. So we were kind of holding all of these tensions together. And I have to say that the St. Louis community was incredible. The nonprofit community was incredible in how they were able really to shift and pivot. And it wasn't all smooth. There was a lot of negotiating. There was a lot of like fits and starts, but for the most part, organizations very quickly, similar to the Brown School, figured out how to shift their work remote. So, organizations in St. Louis weren't accustomed to doing telehealth. They weren't accustomed to meeting with clients over the phone. And they really quickly figured out what protocols they needed to put in place to do that, what technology they needed to learn to do that, and then how they needed to teach their clients to access services that way. And because of that, we've really been able to shift the majority of our practicum to remote work. And students are doing all kinds of things remotely. We have students that are doing direct practice, one-on-one kind of clinical sessions with clients. We have students that are running focus groups with clients. We have students that are figuring out what it means to run a community meeting, looking at policy, developing curriculum. There's a whole continuum of things that students have been involved in remotely. And then there were students that needed to go on site. We had students that were working with unhoused populations who needed to be in places to help distribute PPE to people, to help feed people, to help try to get people into secure housing. And we worked really closely within the protocols of the city and the county and Washington University to provide letters for those students, to work with the organizations to make sure the proper PPE was in place. And we always gave students the choice. Students always had the choice not to go to practicum if they didn't want to. So we really have worked very hard on how do we kind of maintain this ability for students to learn the field, knowing that in 5 or 10 years, we could have another pandemic or similar situation. So learning how to practice in this scenario is really important, but also trying to get as close as we can possibly get to a traditional practicum experience for students. I would say our foundation students are getting ready to start practicum in January. And they are, I would say, majority still going to be completely remote. Some sites had opened up a little bit to do some more in-person work with proper protocol. And now that our case rates are going up again, are kind of tightening back down and moving more to remote for that. But we kind of remain flexible and working with organizations to put the public health protocol into place so that we are confident that if a student wakes up one morning and everything looks like it's okay to be in person, that those protocols are in place, but also making sure that students are doing what feels comfortable and safe for themselves. We have been working with students who are not in St. Louis to do their foundation practicum in whatever geography they're in, that is a pretty big change for us. Usually we require all of those foundation practicum for social work to be in St. Louis. And so we've been working to affiliate sites across the country. We've also had students that are choosing to wait till summer to start their practicum, their foundation practicum, to see, what the situation might be like then. So we're being incredibly flexible around our policies and procedures in trying to garner the most amount of opportunities for students, and then also place students really where they are and where they're comfortable. I'll say too that our curriculum is kind of overseen by 2 accrediting bodies, one for public health and one for social work. And we've been working with our accrediting bodies, in particular for social work, to reduce the number of hours that are required for a degree. And so we've been doing some advocacy on that side too, just knowing that things are moving a little bit more slowly in these times. For international practicum, those of you who might be thinking about doing that sort of work, there is a pause on travel right now to protect students and the communities that you might be serving. That pause is a university pause, but as you may know, many countries aren't accepting people from the US into their borders. So we're watching that really closely. We're working with students case by case to see if we can get people traveling, and when those travel restrictions will lift. We've got several students that are thinking about next summer, and we can give no firm advice around what travel next summer will look like. But we have been able to work with our international NGOs to provide opportunities for students to complete international fieldwork remotely, which is really exciting to be able to build these international relationships through technology and have students still be involved in that global work. It's different than being in a different culture, working in a different language, and students are really getting some valuable experience that is going to scaffold up towards their career goals. We continue to think about how we can best support the community through Practicum. One of the things that we've been able to do is stand up a field unit that the Brown School is really doing the educational part of the Practicum, and students are being placed with the county health department to do contact tracing. We're already in conversation about what vaccine distribution might look like and how students might support with that. We also have several universities in the area and actually nationally who've reached out to ask about students doing Practicum to support their COVID response with their students by offering student support. So we're trying to really figure out how we can support what the emerging needs of the community are in this time too. So we've been pretty successful, I think, in connecting students to Practicum. We'll see how things happen in January. We don't know what's going to happen after the holidays, and we're preparing for multiple different outcomes. And students have really been flexible in thinking about their learning goals as well. The Practicum search process, I think, has been taking a little bit longer. Timelines, I think, for everyone feel a little bit stretched, and with the uncertainty, people are taking a little bit more time to make decisions. But overall, the field faculty as a group has been working really hard to help open up as many pathways to Practicum as possible.
Thanks, Jenny. And I know for Emily and Sean, you likely are just now starting to think toward or getting ready to start foundation practicum since you're still in your first year. But Danny, you likely either had to make some quick adjustments to your internship or practicum plans. So you want to talk a little bit about what field education was like for you over the summer and currently?
Yeah, of course. So I, in the past summer vacation, I just finished the internship for my Master of Social Policy program. And I work as a research assistant for one of the Brown School faculty members. And as far as I know, the intern course for the MSP program was very flexible. Many of my Chinese peers, now they are finished this program and back to China. They work remote during the summer vacation. And for the practicum for the MSW and the MPH program, I heard about some points like hours reduction. And yes, for the program, but my peers all worked throughout the pandemic just very smoothly pertaining to their internship work or practicum job. Yes, and I don't think I really had to make a huge adjustment toward my the public health practicum. I will search for a job for next summer practicum, and because now Brown School is being very flexible, and field instructors are here to help, and many job positions are available. I just don't worry about my incoming practicum for the public health program. Yes, thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Danny. And I'm glad to hear that it's been going smoothly. So I know we're coming close to the end of the session, surprisingly. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm going to move through the next few pieces of the slide deck a little quickly. That way we can get to any questions that have been trickling in. So other things that have changed at the Brown School because of the pandemic, one of the areas that has really honestly grown tremendously is our professional development offerings. This summer, we established an open classroom, which is an opportunity now for folks in the community, but also at the Brown School to take advantage of these 100% online and 100% free learning opportunities from experts at the Brown School and partners that we have at Washington University and in the fields of social work, public health, and social policy. One of the series that was really huge this summer was our COVID-19 and race series, which those are all of these opportunities, including that series, is available online for anyone to go back and view if you would like to. And then there will be upcoming opportunities to register for if you'd ever like to participate in a live session. We also established a new initiative this year, the Pandemic Preparedness and Response Initiative. And this is a really robust online program, again, open to both the public and to our students. It's a 5-part self-paced program that provides some guidance around how do we prepare organizations, communities, using evidence-based and transdisciplinary responses and all through an equity lens. So things that you should certainly check out if they are of interest to you, and I know have been really, really going quite well for those who have taken advantage of these opportunities thus far. Jackie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about professional development or any of these initiatives from kind of a leadership perspective.
I'd like to say that I think it was Dean McKay who paraphrased this from somebody else that she had heard it from, but we can't let a good crisis go to waste. And I think that that is something that professional development really did, was really utilize this moment in time over the summer and it's continuing into the fall and now into the spring to let our offerings be more widely available to people. And so one of the things, even to all of those students or potential students who are on the call right now, I don't know if somebody could put the link in the chat, but you can go out and see these panels and these different classes or these discussions that have come up that we've done through Open Classroom. They're really engaging, they're really interesting. And you can get like a little bit of a taste of what it's like to hear from some of our faculty. I think, Sarah, I'm not sure if your slides had that we had over 30,000 registrations for these programs, locally, nationally, globally, and over 26,000 views of lectures. So you can still go and look at ones we've done in the past, or you could also be on live, and they continue to occur every week. So please look out for those. There's some really good offerings.
Thanks, Jackie. And finally, the area that we wanted to talk about a little bit here too is just the continued efforts in research and advocacy that Brown School faculty, staff, and students have been involved in through the pandemic. So much impactful research has come from our Brown School faculty, including on all of these areas and more. And you can go to the Brown School's website to learn a little bit more about what some of these studies have meant and the results and impact that they've had. We've also been very involved in policy advocacy. Most notably this summer, we're involved in briefs and virtual events on the importance of the Medicaid expansion bill in Missouri and the Ready by 5 campaign. All these efforts and more were led by Brown School faculty, our policy centers, including the Clark Fox Policy Institute. And I also just want to note the incredible advocacy and work that have been done kind of at the grassroots level by our students. Danny, I know you were involved in a really cool project this summer to help support Brown School students with PPE. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that entailed for you?
Yes, of course. So just at the very beginning of the pandemic and stay-at-home policy, since this pandemic started just earlier in China, and many like the families and friends of the Chinese faculty members and students at the Brown School have got some PPE preparation sent from China, and at the beginning of the pandemic, some of the Brown School community members are actually a lack of the PPEs, and the Chinese cohort just get together and decided to we want to really do something to help the Brown community, and we just prepared a plan to share the extra PPEs from Chinese students and faculty members, and with the help of the Dean McKay and all the Brown School staff, we create a Google sign-up sheet for the number of masks you need, and students and many staff members were there to help disseminate or deliver those equipment the Brown School students need during that extreme time. Yes, and I really feel that we were empowered. We stand together to push through this pandemic, and that is really the value pursued by the Brown School community. I just feel that we stand together. Yes, and that is how I feel in my experience.
Thank you, Danny. It was such an incredible thing to see how many students and faculty came together, and I was very grateful I was able to take advantage of the masks sharing that happened earlier this year too. So very appreciative of all the work that went into coordinating that. So we're very near the end of our session. We have a couple more minutes and a few questions that have come through. So I'm going to answer these, but of course, if you have other questions and we're not able to get to them, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I'm going to share some contact information here at the end, and I know all of our panelists would be happy to share their contact info with you as well if you'd like to speak with anyone individually. We had a few questions come in though, specifically around the international student experience. One question was how many international students study online, and let me see if I can find this. So we only had, let's see, about number of 18 international students online who are abroad, so in their home countries. The number is much smaller for second years. So that was for first years. First year students, about 18 international students online studying from their home countries. And most of those students do want to come in the spring if they can get visas. And we know that's been a really challenging process as well. There was a question about if the COVID situation continues and we have to continue with the online learning, will students receive an F1 visa? And that we're not really sure about. It looks like that will still maintain how it is currently, but just keep in close conversation with admissions and with the Office of International Students and Scholars around that process. I know it's such a stressful time, and especially for our students who are outside of the country. It's really challenging right now for folks. And then there was another question about the application deadline, which thank you for bringing this up, because that's a perfect segue to kind of ending this session and saying that we do have our deadline coming up on December 15th. It's our priority consideration deadline for anyone who would like to be in that kind of first round of early decisions for admission. Now, this deadline, while an important one, is not the only deadline. We have another one on March 1st, which is our regular decision deadline. If you apply early, and we encourage you to do so if you're ready, that's going to give you priority consideration for funding that's available, as well as get you a decision about your admission no later than February 1st. So if you are ready and want to apply by that date, please do, but also know, because the question was about, extending it due to a lot of challenges that we're all facing right now. And the answer is yes, you can apply anytime after that in between December 15th and March 1st. You'll still be considered for admission. You'll still be considered for funding. We just work in order of priority from who submitted earliest. So submit when you're ready, because a strong application is more important than a rushed but meeting a deadline application, if that makes sense. All right, everyone. We are at 1 o'clock. If anyone wants to stay on and continue to ask questions, we're happy to do so. I know my panelists may have places to go to. So with that, I am going to go ahead and say goodbye. Thank you all so much for joining me. This has been such a good conversation. I've really enjoyed hearing from all of you. Thank you for taking the time today. And for those watching live, please do feel free to reach out. We'll drop, looks like we're dropping some contact information in the chat. So please go there if you have any more questions for us.